Hi y'all, and welcome to Gesso Art. In this video I'm going to paint for you this small still life of 3 beignets and a coffee cup. Now beignets are this French delicacy that we get down in New Orleans at this restaurant called Café du Monde. That's all they serve is basically coffee and these French donuts, which are basically fried bread covered with tons of powdered sugar. Now these are the colors that I've primarily used with the addition of black. I primed my canvas first by painting it with black gesso and let that dry. Now I've turned this canvas on its side just because it's easier for me to paint a straight line for some reason up and down rather than side to side. And I just basically wanted to establish a foundation for the plate of beignets to rest on. Now I'm just kind of freehanding what I think this plate will look like. I did take a photo that I'll show you in just a moment on my last trip down there to Café du Monde, but this painting is just using that photo for inspiration. I'm not directly copying from it. I do want the edge of the plate and the coffee cup both to go off beyond the edge of the canvas. I just thought it would look more interesting and more zoomed in on the beignets, which are the focal point. When I'm recording these videos of painting, the camera is, I haven't figured out the right way to make it where it doesn't make me feel awkward the way I'm oriented towards the canvas. So I'll be honest, I like just painting just on my own and not having to worry about a camera or anything better. But I still think it's perhaps useful to maybe a few of you out there to watch some of these. And I've really enjoyed watching other people's painting demonstrations and videos and instructions on YouTube, so I just wanted to give back a little too. So I'm willing to do it if you guys are willing to watch them. Anyway, I'm working on a series of these small 8x8-inch canvases for an exhibit here in the gallery that I'm calling Snapshots of Louisiana. I love living down here. It's all about celebrating, the things that you can, when you can, and the way that the people down here celebrate the Cajuns is basically with food. So yeah, I'm going to have several of these small canvases with some food items on them. Anyway, I thought this one would be a good one to share with you all because there's a lot of texture that we're going to be developing in this painting to capture the unevenness in this bread and the depth of the powdered sugar that's, sprinkled on top. So my first color that I'm using for where the beignet that's not covered up with powdered sugar is going to be in this raw sienna. I'll add a little bit of variety to it by adding in some white and some yellow for the lightest parts, and I'll darken the edges that are turning away from us or that are depressed, sunken in, with a darker color like burnt umber or even some of the burnt sienna. I'm going to do just a little bit of a roadmap. I want these areas that are not covered up with the powdered sugar to have that beautiful golden fried pastry look. And then where the powdered sugar will be, I'm base coating those areas with gray. You have to have the darks for the highlights to show up. If I just painted it white right now, there would be no way to make that lighter, and it would just be a solid color and it wouldn't have any depth to it. So you got to have those darks in first. Now these are acrylic paints, and so they do dry very quickly. However, this is such a small painting and I'm working in such small areas at a time that they are not drying out on me, so that I am able to do some blending. Although honestly, there's not a lot, I don't want a lot of soft blended edges in this painting. I want there to be a variety of texture so that you can see the detail of the texture in this beignets. So I'm keeping my brush strokes pretty random, and I'm also changing the color ever so slightly often. And here's the reference photo. That was my inspiration for the painting. As you can see, they're not very much alike at all, but it just gives me an idea and gives you an idea of what they look like in reality too. With this small flat brush, I'm dabbing on some of the lighter color for the powdered sugar, and it's mixing too much with the paint underneath it because it's still damp. So I'm going to work on the cup now instead. I'm using a very pale gray to sketch it in, and because of this black paint underneath it, it's going to take a couple layers to cover that up. So I've put a couple coats of light gray on the coffee cup. I'm going to let that dry and work on our powdered sugar now. So this is a medium layer that I'm applying a light gray with this old Bob Ross 1-inch landscape brush. The bristles are kind of splayed out, which is great for this. It's a very fluffy brush. So I very lightly dip it into my piles of paint and then just kind of stipple it on. If you don't have a brush like this, you could try a sponge. That would work. If you had a round brush, a big round brush, and hold it kind of close to the bristles so that you can kind of splay it out a little bit and stipple on this color, the same way. This is really a fun little painting. We're not worried about precise details. It's a lot of randomness and a lot of texture. I hope you try it. If you do, please leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Now while that powdered sugar stuff is drying off, let's work on the lettering on the coffee cup. I'm using a medium to small round brush. The important thing is that it comes to a sharp point. It doesn't matter what size brush you use as long as it comes to a really sharp point. And the way you increase the thickness of the line that you're making is by pressing a little more firmly on the bristles. I'm just using clean water on a brush to clean the edges. So we've had a lot of fun with the random brush strokes and the variety of brush marks that we've made to indicate the difference between the beignet and the powdered sugar that's resting on top of it. And so now it's time to do all those little special highlights and shadows that will make it look like it has some form. So on these beignets, I'm thinking of them as basically a box, rectangular box. And so I'm imagining my light source is coming from the left and maybe even a little bit upper left. So I'm going to do just a little bit of shading on the areas that I think are turned away from the light. And then I'm also going to do some highlights on the left side of the cup. And I want to put a shadow on the rim of the plate under the beignet that, as we're looking at this canvas now, would be on the left-hand side. So it's those other little final tiny details that will make this look like it has more form and dimension. So we put the dark gray for where as our roadmap for where our powdered sugar was going to be, and then we stippled on some gray color, lighter gray color with that Bob Ross brush. Now I'm using a small brush, and I wanted to warm up that gray tone that was underneath. And so this is almost pure white, but it has a little bit of burnt sienna and cadmium red in it. Just a tiny bit, just to warm it up a little. So I'm switching to my palette knife, and I'm using almost pure white now. And you just use a light touch Let the weave of the canvas that you're working on do some of the work for you. You can see it's just a very, very small amount of paint that's on the back of this palette knife. So it really deposits just tiny bits of paint on the ridges of the surface that are underneath it. It works really well. And don't forget, move your canvas around if it helps you get a better angle. I do that a lot. You can see here now where I'm using just a pure white. I'm cleaning up some edges, making sure the shadows underneath the beignets look correct. And I'm working on this plate now, so the beignets don't look like they're just floating in the air. So I've added some yellow, just a little bit of yellow to white, and I'm highlighting the left side of the cup. Remember, we said earlier that we're imagining, or I'm imagining, that the light is coming from the left upper left as we're facing the canvas. I think it makes a really good contrast because the gray that I used to block in the cup was made with Prussian blue and a tiny bit of burnt umber. But it was heavier to the blue side, so that makes a really good contrast with the sunny, yellowy, whitish color that we're using on the left. So now just some final details, again using the knife, just making sure that, the edges of the beignets look right. Piling up that powdered sugar. So here it is, done, mostly done. I'll look at it another day or two before I sign it, but I'm really happy how it turned out. I hope you enjoyed this. If so, please give me a like. Don't forget to think about subscribing. Y'all have a good day, and I'll see you next time.